Let's do it.
A25.
Hey guys, Trumpster. Trump's auto tariffs. We broke down an F-150. Brother. Hey brother. I don't know if non-Americans get that reference. Preemptive like. Trump's auto tariffs. We broke down an F-150 to explain industry impact. Okay, so I think I'll know a little bit of where this is going because I learned that a lot of Americans, I'm sure, like if they want to buy American, they buy American brand cars like GMC, Ford, But I've learned that doesn't buying American brand cars doesn't necessarily mean you are buying a car that was built most by Americans and in American factories, because a lot of companies, they outsource their production, their parts for their cars, their parts production, Jesus. And so it can be misleading. Like I think Toyota or Honda might actually, it's like, oh, those are Japanese cars, right? But you could actually be contributing more to American workers by buying those cars, because they actually might create more of their car parts in the USA. So putting tariffs on companies that are outside of the USA for car building can actually do the opposite of what you're trying to do. And yeah, no expert on this, like I usually say about everything, but I like to learn. Let's go. Wall Street Journal, preemptive like, original link, top description. Let's do it. Take it away, Trump.
President Trump's auto tariffs are here, and that means
a 25% tariff on all cars that are not made in the United States. If they're made in the United States, there's absolutely no tariff.
But no car, not even a US-built Ford F-150, is 100% US made. Just look inside.
It's made up of thousands and thousands of parts. Those parts come from over 24 different countries.
Countries like Mexico, Canada, Romania. Trump wants these parts to say made in the US. But moving all of this is not so simple.
To lift and shift that whole thing, that's kind of like saying, pick up the state of Maine and move it over to Wyoming. Could you do it? I suppose you could, but man, it would be tough duty.
So let's break it down to understand what Trump is trying to do with a slew of new tariffs.
I keep blinking. I put eye drops in, but still.
And why down to understand what Trump is trying to do with a slew of new tariffs and why automakers are warning it could backfire. This chart shows where cars sold in the US are coming from. All of these cars now face that 25% auto tariff. But this 53% of US-made cars is also affected by that tariff because of all of those foreign parts.
Some of the major components, this is for the Ford F-150. They have an alternator, create current. It's from Mexico. We have half shafts. These deliver torque to the wheels from the driveline. They're from Canada. We have tires, of course, 5 of them. These come from Korea. Of course, you have to have wheels. In this case, a styled, tractive wheels. These all come from Mexico.
Those tires from South Korea would face that auto tariff and any reciprocal or universal tariff placed on the country. Those parts from Canada and Mexico, well, that's where it gets more complicated. Eventually, they would face that auto tariff, any reciprocal or universal tariff, and an additional Mexico-Canada tariff. But the White House said parts compliant with the U.S.-Mexico-Canada Trade Agreement, or USMCA, remain tariff-free.
Today, President Donald J. Trump signed a proclamation invoking Section 232 on the Trade Expansion Act 1962 to impose a 25% tariff on imports of automobiles and certain automobile parts, addressing a critical threat to U.S. national security. The 25% tariff will be applied to imported passenger vehicles, sedans, SUVs, crossovers, minivans, cargo vans, and light trucks, as well as key automobile parts, engines, transmissions, powertrain parts, and electrical components, with processes to expand tariffs on additional parts if necessary. USMCA compliant automobile parts will remain tariff-free until the Secretary of Commerce, in consultation with U.S. Customs and Border Protection, CBP, establishes a process to apply tariffs to their non-US content.
With the US-Mexico-Canada Trade Agreement, or USMCA, remain tariff-free until there is a process to apply tariffs to their non-US content. And for some parts, like a transmission, there will be a lot of content to consider.
When you realize what goes into an automatic transmission, that's what this is. And so you can see this plethora of parts, gears and seals, springs, fasteners, valves and shafts, all these different parts. They can come from different suppliers, and those suppliers can be located pretty much anywhere in the world.
Take a look at this map showing how Canadian manufacturer Linamar creates transmissions for the US market today. It takes 7 border crossings before that part is in a car being sold in the US. These 3 crossings into the US would eventually face Trump's tariffs. And even if the manufacturing of all of this was moved into the US, this part, the raw steel, would still be subject to Trump's 25% tariff on imported steel and aluminum.
This is going to be disruptive on day one.
Guys, to be devil's advocate, okay? If you think you're being unfairly tariffed, I don't know about the pre-existing tariffs before Trump's tariff war, okay? But if you want to say, hey, we're going to put tariffs on you because we see evidence of unfair tariffs to us, and doing that in a cordial manner that will see results, I can hear you out, okay? But applying tariffs just blankly makes no sense to me.
Going to increase the cost of doing
Aluminum.
This is going to be disruptive on day one. It's going to increase the cost of doing business.
The total amount depends on the vehicle. A Cox Automotive estimate shows a car made in the US would incur $3,000 in costs from the Canada-Mexico tariffs, plus another $3,000 from the tariffs on foreign-made auto parts. Then research shows an added $400 for the steel and aluminum tariffs, and more for any reciprocal or universal tariffs.
Have you heard any concerns from the automakers, though, about the tariffs on parts that will go into effect over the coming weeks, about what that's going to mean for the price of
Well, I gave them a
American-made
big
cars?
break for a month. I didn't charge them anything, for a big month, for that first month, and they brought a lot of material into this country because they could bring it in without tariff.
But eventually, added production costs could change what cars buyers see on dealer lots.
You could see a stop in production of a number of vehicles, some of which are very important to some of the automakers.
Trump's goal, however, is to pressure automakers to make them in the U.S. instead.
This is going to lead to the construction of a lot of plants.
And the White House said the duties on Canada and Mexico are also meant to disrupt the drug trade.
We've lost
From Canada?
millions of people due to fentanyl. It comes mostly from China, but it comes through Mexico and it comes through Canada.
The trade group representing Ford, GM, and Stellantis said it's critical that tariffs are done in a way that preserves the competitiveness of the North American auto sector. North American is the key there. Because of the Trump-negotiated USMCA and NAFTA before it, automakers have essentially viewed these countries as borderless.
We have really built the industry around that free trade zone that's existed for so long.
It's why Mexico and Canada exported about $75 billion in passenger cars and more than $100 billion in auto parts to the U.S. last year. So shrinking supply chains to just the U.S.?
If you had to move production of a vehicle or even a complex system like an engine, a transmission, an axle, and you're making that in Canada or you're making that in Mexico and you just want to move the plant, that could be years.
Analysts say even shifting a foreign-made part to a U.S. supplier can take months.
We have well-established, very detailed testing plans for every component on a vehicle, and we don't get to skip those just because we might want to or it might be easy, right? Because it's a safety and quality issue. It costs money and it costs lives when we get those things wrong.
So either choice, moving production or facing the tariffs, come with added costs, some of which economists say will be passed on to consumers. That will push up.
Some economists, I'm not an economist, and I know that if you have cheaper manufacturing costs and product costs, parts costs for your manufacturing in the USA, and now those are tariffed, and you either have to pay more for those parts from, say, Canada or Mexico, or produce them at higher cost in the USA, then yeah, it's a business. In order to stay in business, you have to jack the price up.
Already elevated car prices.
I'm no economist. Let me know if I'm wrong, but that's
Economists
seems
say
simple.
will be passed on to consumers. That will push up already elevated car prices. This could then tamp down demand and slow production.
If there's less production, there'll be less demand for workers in the North American auto industry. Even before there'll be less demand for workers in the North American auto industry. Even before you get the cut in profitability, there'll probably be a push for more labor-saving investment in U.S. production to try to compensate for the increased costs elsewhere in the production process.
That labor-saving investment, analysts say, will come in the form of automation.
When you move...
Okay, apart from any of this stuff, I'm sorry, tangent. This stuff is so cool. Look at these things.
Saving investment and
the increased costs elsewhere in the production process.
That labor
Off topic, but that looks so cool. Sorry, back on topic.
saving investment, analysts say, will come in the form of automation.
When you move production to the U.S., you do it, because you need to be close, but it doesn't necessarily bring a lot of jobs with it. It brings a lot of automation.
But the United Auto Workers Union applauded Trump's tariff on foreign autos, adding it's now on the automakers to bring back good union jobs to the U.S. To make investments months or years into the future, automakers need
certainty and stability. They want it to be clear what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, and why it's going to happen.
But automakers are still waiting for clarity on the extent and application of the various tariffs, especially after the pause and then temporary exemption from the Mexico-Canada tariff. Especially after
Trump pauses tariffs on Mexico, Canada for a month, but his threat spooked almost everyone.
The pause and then temporary exemption from the Mexico-Canada tariffs.
If you're, pausing stuff, if you're uncertain, how do you, whether it's good or a bad thing to get rid of the tariffs or keep the tariffs, if you're being swappy, is that you get that my made up term there, then companies are going to be like, okay, I'm going to invest in more technology for cars, but wait, he might not do this, so this might be a bad purchase. So what do? I'm in limbo.
Especially after the pause and then temporary exemption from the Mexico-Canada tariffs.
The uncertainty of whether and how long these tariffs will stick around is creating real dollars waste in terms of warehousing and trucking, and call it soft waste, wasted time, wasted energy, wasted attention that could be better deployed building and designing the next vehicle, the next system.
That time spent debating if this alternator should continue to come from Mexico or this crossbeam from Canada is to some a distraction from the larger disruptors in the industry, namely the fast-moving Chinese competition. China is now the world's largest vehicle exporter.
Very tumultuous time in the industry, for sure. Things are changing faster than they ever did before. And at the end of the day, you have to remember, it's not the big that eat the small, it's the fast that eat the slow. And so, whatever you are, don't be the slow they ever did before. And at the end of the day, you have to remember, it's not the big that eat the small, it's the fast that eat the slow. And so, whatever you are, don't be the slow.
Or in this case, couldn't it be the fast that gets screwed? Or the slow that gets screwed?
Move quickly.
So the United Auto Worker Union in the U.S., I believe I heard they did not endorse. They're one of the big endorsements for candidates in our elections. I don't believe they endorsed Trump this past election, but now the head of the union is very happy about these tariffs because I guess I don't really know. Could it mean like, okay, now they can get higher wages, now they can get more work, but if you're a part of the auto worker union which being in that union's whole purpose is to look after your job and your getting your worth and keeping your job. Well, if Trump putting these tariffs on these countries could lead to being more economically feasible for car companies to create more automated machines and raise costs, I just spit, sorry, gross. Then that could mean that both of those could mean that you could lose your job. And so, as you can tell, no expert in this stuff. I'm expert in very little, if nothing. Okay, but very interesting video. Would appreciate any comments down below. And if I said anything stupid you disagree with, call me out. I always want you to do that in the comments. You guys are always great in the comments. Love y'all. See you next time. We'll keep on learning. Bye, guys.